Out with Felipe's. I just had an incredible trip to Sichuan where I learned about giant pandas, I learned about agroforestry, I learned about the Anzhe Nature Reserve, and I'm having a conversation about it, and I hope you check it out.
The King's Jewel, the Arkenstone.
I remember when I read The Hobbit the first time, I must have been, well, I feel like my dad read it to me when I was really young, but then I read it myself when I was in junior high school, and I was really taken with the description of natures. You know, the way that he describes the trees and Mirkwood and the bees when they go to certain parts of the story. All of Lord of the Rings, it's like when Tolkien describes nature, he has such a love for it. And the more I've gotten to know nature, the more I understand what he's so in love with. So that's one of the things that's always admired me about Tolkien, and why it was such a privilege to be a part of these movies.
Mountain was really something actually our Chinese audience asked for. It's symbolic for the Chinese, it's aspirational, and you know, he had just come off playing this incredible role in The Hobbit, and the voice, the gravitas that he brings to that voice really seemed to imbue this mountain with its own ability to speak.
We're talking about going to China. I've been to China before, and I really love it there. I find it to be a really kind of vibrant place that there's no doubt we're in the 21st century in China. And I realize how much we have in common, you know, how much we're actually moving in the same direction, and we're moving there together.
I've been interested in conservation for a long time. Whenever I would think about global warming, for example, it seemed to me like this big mind-boggling problem that it was just like a doomsday that we were going to, you know, be burn up by global warming. And then I was introduced to Conservation International, and I did one of their nature speaking programs. I did Mountain with them. And I met this incredible group of scientists and thinkers and policymakers and philanthropists who were breaking down the problems into manageable pieces and then working really hard to solve them. Oh, I did, yeah, that was my first introduction to Conservation International. I did the voiceover for Mountain, which is part of their nature speaking campaign. They've got a bunch of actors all over the world who do these voiceovers. And it's a great way to introduce people to the world of conservation. It's been a great experience, and I've met so many interesting people because of it. Basically went into the studio, I saw the film they made, and I gave voice to an element of nature, which was Mountain. And yeah, I'm very proud to be a part of that. The thing about nature conservation is that anyone can do it. Anyone can learn more about conservation. Anyone can learn more about the science. Anyone who can just go out in nature, spend some time, fall in love with it, that's doing work for nature conservation. It's such a kind of big, broad, open thing that everyone can participate in. So I talk to my friends about it. It's such a big part of my life that, you know, most people I spend time with are somehow involved with it, you know. Well, I've been here now for a week, but before that I went to Bali, and before that I was in Sichuan for about a week. So it's been a long way from home, long time. No, I loved all the food in Sichuan. I thought it was some of the best Chinese food I've ever had. There were so many different things on the tables when we were eating. They really treated me well when I went through. Yeah, 火锅好吃. Yeah, I had a really fantastic trip through Sichuan. I went with CI, and we went to the Chengdu research base for giant panda breeding. And I had this incredible afternoon with the pandas. I made bottles for them. I fed a baby panda. I played with them for a little while. I made some cakes to feed the bigger pandas. Pandas, all they do is eat and sleep. They sleep for about 10 hours a day. They eat for the other 13 hours a day, and then they, you know, do other panda things for an hour. They're very picky about what they eat. They like a very certain kind of bamboo. I know that about pandas. I know that they do communicate with each other. They kind of something like that, right? That's what they actually make. That doesn't look like the sound they would make, but that's what the sound they make. And I find that hilarious because they're all doing the same thing. Like all of the pandas are pulling this trick and they're all being fooled by it. It's just the same as us. Another thing I'd like to say about the pandas that I find really fantastic about this research base in particular is that it's a real success story for conservation. It's a real kind of, we can look at a situation like the rebound of the pandas, which are recently off the endangered species list, and think these efforts really do work. And they don't just work for pandas, they work for the forests that the pandas live in. Because when you protect an area for these pandas, you protect all the other species living inside that forest. You also protect the plants, and you give those places a chance to rebound, and that's one of the things that I really want to communicate about the panda conservation efforts. It's a big success, and I really commend not only the government but everyone who worked so hard to make that happen. Well, one thing I can say, the thing about the pandas is that when they're born, it's very hard for them to reproduce because they're fertile for only a very brief window of time. And they're very far apart from each other. So to get them to reproduce is very, very difficult. And when they have a very long gestation period, and when they're born, they're like this big, right? They're just like these little tiny things. So one of the reasons they're such fragile animals is because it takes so much to get a panda to a durable weight, that can survive in the wild. They're just now being reintroduced for the first time in a long time, and that's going to be a very difficult thing to do, to get these pandas to adapt to their environment and then to reproduce. But the habitat protection is a real crucial part of protecting the pandas. But it's also a crucial thing for our protection too. I'm very interested in forest conservation. Forests, it's believed that forests are 30% of the solution to climate change. In the Amazon right now, there's 6,000 square kilometers of forest that's taken down every year for roads, for farms, for mines, and that kind of number is, I think, it's really shocking to me, but the forests create our fresh water, our oxygen. They're very crucial to our survival as a species, not just us or the pandas, to really everyone in the world. Yeah, I've made a few trips with Conservation International. Earlier this year I also went to Bali, and I got to see some of the programs they have going on there. They've got a very diverse program. They've got programs on the top of mountains, and they've got programs in the reef. I got to swim with some manta rays. They're the most gentle animals, and they're extremely intelligent too. They can recognize faces. So and when you're with them in the water, you get a strong sense that they're looking at you the same way you're looking at them. They'll swim up to you and kind of look at you like this with their eyes, and then kind of swim away, and then they'll come back around and they'll kind of slow down underneath you. And I was probably about, I don't know, this far away from them sometimes, and you can feel them watching you and being with you in the water. They're the most graceful animals you'll ever see. They swim upside down. They're absolutely beautiful, incredible. So I got to see that. I got to see that in Bali. Last year I went to Africa with Conservation International. I went to a couple places in Kenya. I saw this really inspiring elephant protection reserve, where they basically take the young elephants that are their parents have either been killed by poachers or something has happened to them, and they take them into this orphanage and raise them up. I was in southern Kenya too, in a place called Chulu Hills, where Conservation International has a big program to kind of to help the community get engaged in conservation efforts. And in doing so, they're able to protect the wildlife, but they're also able to add some benefit to the local communities. I think it's really important that kids get out in nature early. At the Enzaha Nature Reserve, there's a great facility there to kind of show nature to the children, and there's some programs to kind of teach them about the seasons. There was a video I saw about a program that happened last fall that gave kids a chance to interact with nature and get a sense of what that fall time is, because it's a very important part of the forest life, you know, as they shed their leaves and kind of create the understory. And the kids made a bunch of art out of the leaves. They worked together to kind of learn about the forest and learn about the fall. I think those programs are really important. I know I had them when I was a kid. There was my family, we would go to the woods all the time to camp and hike, and it's what helped me develop my love for nature and realize how important it is. So I think those programs are really important, and they're, you know, I really enjoy learning about things.